Good morning. I'm Julio Malera, CEO of the Business Report, and on behalf of our sponsors, CMA Technology Solutions, Baker Donaldson, and the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, we'd like to welcome you to this morning's cybersecurity webcast. This is a hot topic impacting every business in the world and one that has huge repercussions for local businesses. So we need to be aware and prepared. We have two of the top experts in the country joining us this morning for our forum. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce executives from today's sponsors that make this program possible. First is Mr. Marty Mackey with CMA Technology Solutions. Welcome, Marty.
Good morning, Julio. As you said, my name is Marty Mackey. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at CMA. We're a local business that specializes in information security, managed services, data center solutions, and contract management. And also, like you said, this is such a hot topic. We talk about it every day with our customers, and I'm just glad y'all are continuing to get this message out. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us. Next is Ms. Mary Stein with the East Baton Rouge Library System. Mary, welcome.
Thanks, Julio. Your East Baton Rouge Parish Library is so proud to co-sponsor today's presentation. As part of the knowledge industry that relies heavily on data and technology, we completely understand the importance of cybersecurity. We're also committed to sharing information, online training, and resources to help you become more agile and protected in the digital age. Check us out at ebrpl.com.
Thanks, Mary. And Ms. Lena Rush with Baker Donaldson. Welcome, Lena.
Thank you. As Julio said, I'm Lena Rush. I lead the Baker Donaldson Data Incident Team, and we are very happy to partner today with the Business Report on such an important topic for businesses. Baker Donaldson is a full-service firm. We have 650 attorneys across 22 offices and 30 professionals who primarily focus on data protection, privacy, and security. And a third of those team members are credentialed by the world's largest privacy organization, the International Association of Privacy Professionals. And we have professionals that not only have a US credential, but some that have Canadian and European focused credentials also. Our role as Privacy and Security Counsel is to prepare clients in case of a cyber threat. We conduct table exercises, we develop incident response plans, and we help make sure that your policies and procedures for security are legally compliant. And then if a client does experience a breach, we serve as coaches throughout the whole process. Not only legal issues, but we help with client communications, vendor engagement, and the remediation efforts. And we're available 365 days a year, 24/7 to immediately start to assist. We're looking forward to today's program, and we'll also make available some additional information to attendees on cyber response from a legal perspective in the coming weeks.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, our partners make today's program possible. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Business Report's Executive Editor, J.R. Ball, who will moderate today's discussion. J.R., take it away.
Thank you, Julio, and good morning to everyone joining us today. Our format for this webcast is that we'll begin with a presentation from Jeff Moulton and Nick Anderson, followed by a question and answer session. If you miss any information, a digital replay of this webcast will be available later today and can be accessed through our Daily Report PM newsletter. And now let's introduce our two experts. Jeff Moulton, a member of the Louisiana Cybersecurity Commission, is president and CEO of Stephenson Technologies Corp, a nonprofit affiliate LSU established to serve as a classified federal government contract resource for cybersecurity. With more than $12 million in federal funding for classified projects this fiscal year, the organization supports the U.S. Air Force Research Lab, the Navy Research Lab, and the Defense Intelligence Agency on several programs. Jeff has deep experience in the intelligence communities, assessing and defining corporate level and globally deployable network security solutions. He has been appointed to the ODNI NSA Computational Cybersecurity in Compromised Environments, the Secretary of the Air Force's Cyber Vision 2025 Committee, the AFCEA International Cyber Committee, and the IEEE Homeland Security Technologies Committee. Now, I don't know what any of those acronyms or committees do or mean, but it sounds mighty impressive. So thank you, Jeff, for that. Nick Anderson is the former Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy, Security, and Emergency Response at the U.S. Department of Energy. He led the agency's national effort to secure the country's energy infrastructure against all hazards. Working closely with the electricity, oil, and natural gas industries, other federal agencies and groups, as well as state and local communities to advance national energy security while also managing evolving threats to critical infrastructure. Nick also served in the White House Office of Management and Budget as the federal cybersecurity lead and senior cybersecurity advisor to the federal chief information officer, where he was responsible for government-wide cybersecurity policy, development, and compliance of shared federal security services. Previously, he served as the chief information officer for Navy Intelligence and was the head of the Office of Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Systems and Technologies at the U.S. Coast Guard. He has served on active duty with the U.S. Marine Corps, managing intelligence mission systems in Iraq, Europe, and Africa. He's also led cybersecurity and technology programs worldwide with several leading and emerging companies. This year, he was named a top 10 Chief Information Security Officer to watch in 2021 by Washington Exec. And boy, those credentials deserve a wow as well. So look, I pale in comparison. So gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us this morning. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, JR, for that kind introduction. If it's okay, I'll get the party started here a little bit and talk about some things that are, I think, on the forefront of most people's thoughts when it comes to our new work environment caused by COVID, or at least the catalyst was COVID. But before I go down that path, I'd like to talk, number one, it's National Cyber Awareness Month, October. This week, each week has a different theme. This week's theme is cybersecurity first. And I think that's very appropriate. And hopefully at the end of this hour-long discussion, we will have drilled that through your head multiple times. But let me just first say that the hacks today are increasing in frequency and certainly in severity. We're seeing new things targeted now that we have not seen before. There's a bunch of things that are just scaring the living dickens out of me, and I just want to make sure that I convey that to most of you in the audience here, not only from a professional perspective, but also from a personal perspective. And I'll kind of wrap up my introductory remarks talking about how to protect your children and your devices at home. We're now seeing things like killware. I mean, things that actually can get hacked and actually result in the death of somebody. Zero clickbait. Who'd have heard that 3 years ago? Where if you got a text message from a particular attack vector, it compromises your phone without even clicking on it, right? And now that we're all working, or a lot of us are working from home, Pandora's box has been opened like never before. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think both the audience and folks that are actually employing or being employed and working from home need to have a firm grasp of what that should look like. From an employer's perspective, what I tell people all the time is that if you don't have a policy, a work from home policy, from a security perspective, you're already behind. You should have it clearly defined, writing, make your employees sign it, kind of like a contract or a term of employment, if you will. And I think that is of the utmost importance, because if not, they can always, claim ignorance, and usually that doesn't result in a very good outcome. One of the things that people don't realize is that the average cost of a data breach right now is running around $4.25 million. And if that's not bad enough, the average home breach is about $1.07 million in addition to that. And it takes quite a bit longer. On average, it's around 265 days to detect a breach in your office environment, and about 58 days on top of that if it happens in your home. So I like just to throw out a few suggestions for you, if someone is taking notes on the line here, that'd be great. But make sure that you have a very secure place in your work or in your home to work from. I mean, physical security doesn't go away in your home, right? Make sure that your router does not have your default settings, that you change it frequently, that you only use work devices. And people say, well, I can't afford to be paying, buying these devices for my employees. Well, 4.24 million doesn't scare you. With another 1.7 million on top of it, we're in bad shape. And make policies where you must encrypt your data at rest and your data in transit. Two-factor authentication, and most certainly you need to be logging in through a virtual private network connection. Things like auto locking and so forth. I mean, just good cyber hygiene needs to be spelled out as a term of, empowerment or employment with your remote workforce. Strong passwords goes without saying. And then from a company standpoint, you should be looking to develop some metrics to see if you're actually improving or not. I tell people all the time, I hear this trust but verify. I never trust, and I recommend that you don't either. Our Internet of Things devices are presenting new attack vectors every single day. People don't realize what's going on in their own homes. Your devices are communicating with each other. The machine-to-machine communications and the interfaces of those devices is an attack vector that can be leveraged by our adversaries. And in fact, just last night in Bloomsburg, I read where the Russians were actually hacking people's home networks and using that as the attack vector to get to the intelligence community just last evening. Use data blockers. I mean, people go out to the airport, and I'm in the airport almost every day of my life. I see people in Atlanta all the time taking USB devices and plugging them into the local ports there with no data blocker attached. That is a data source. Your phone can be easily hacked just by charging if you're not cognizant of the fact that that is an attack vector. And if you don't have a data blocker, you can order them on Amazon for $1.50. If you want, come down to see me in my office on 1200 Brickyard Lane in Baton Rouge, and I'll make sure that you get one. 5G is rolling around very quickly, and that's going to grow, and that will actually exponentially increase our attack vectors to the point where almost everything is vulnerable from ways in which we have yet to imagine. And using machine learning and artificial intelligence, our targeting will be a lot easier. This will be all machine run. There won't be a little script kiddie sitting behind a computer somewhere in their mom's basement, or even a nation state won't have to do it anymore. Now it's going to be machine to machine. All these attack vectors will be leveraged, looked for vulnerabilities, and then actually exploited basically automatically. So if that didn't paint a rosy enough picture for you, let me talk a little bit about your kids. Right now, there's some estimates as high as 35 to 40% children are more vulnerable to exploitation than adults. I'm not talking about businesses here. I'm talking about kids at home or kids at school using devices, connecting to the internet. And God forbid, please do not let your children use your work computer for their activities. Make sure you have a separate machine for them. But the bad guys know that they're going to get a great advantage, because most of the people at that age, I'm talking 2 to 20, are not necessarily out there doing credit checks with Experian and all those types of things that hopefully everyone does now. Or do they have a security staff at home to help protect them? So the bad guys know this, and they have a 15 to 17 year head start on exploiting children and their identities. So how do you prevent that? Number one is making sure you understand what your kid's doing online. Number two is things that you can do to help mitigate that vulnerability is put a credit lock on your children, put a credit freeze on their social security number, and it stays frozen until you defrost it whenever they either go to college or move out of the house. And then, just like you and me, every one of those children get a free credit report. So take advantage of that and rotate them every 4 months. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, all do it every 4 months or quarterly. Just offer or ask for a free credit check. If your children has a problem with credit, you've got a problem on your hands. And this is happening literally every day. unfortunately, most people don't find out about it until the kid goes off to school or goes off on their own and tries to get credit or a line of credit. And then they kind of find out that, they've been had for the last 20 years. So that's kind of my introductory remarks. I'll save most of my technical comments for the question and answer period. And I'll turn the mic over to my good colleague, Nick.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And I don't think I could do a better job than Jeff with all of the, kind of the tips and tricks he just gave you for how to, secure yourself, help to secure your business environment, and, importantly, securing, our homes and our families. So I'm sitting in DC today, so I'm gonna pull it up a little bit and talk just a little bit about sort of national level threats, where we're sitting today, and why this should matter to each of us. So while JR gave you a great snapshot of things I've done in my background, I'm actually part of a Louisiana company here today with Lumen Technologies. Lumen, we're right there in Monroe. You may have known us under previous names like CenturyLink, but we're really taking a century of a company being built around the belief that humanity is always at its best when we're producing innovative technologies that are going to advance the way that we work and that we live. But that also comes with a tremendous amount of threat. It comes with a tremendous amount of risk that's introduced into our homes, into our businesses. But we have to connect in order to participate in kind of the digital ecosystem and the digital economy that's powering a lot of us today. These aren't threats that are just limited to high tech companies. These aren't threats that are just limited to companies like Lumen, where we're focused so heavily as a technology company and as someone with a huge amount of infrastructure, 450,000 route miles of fiber in 60 plus countries. This is a problem for every business and for every home and every consumer of a service. I just had a conversation with a machine shop owner not even a half hour ago about what they're having to do to secure their environment from cyber threats. We saw very recently that there were ransomware actors that targeted a food co-op, a farming co-op there in Iowa. This is hitting industries that did not traditionally think about themselves as technology-focused companies and as targets of people that were well-resourced and well-funded, but it's just sort of the environments that we're living in now. So, over the last several years, I've had the opportunity to uniquely see the challenge that our nation faces in cyberspace, whether that was as a state chief information security officer or as the chief information security officer for our public sector business here at Lumen or while at the White House. Really one of those keys, though, to countering the threats that we see today is collaboration. And we have to have collaboration as a key part of protecting key and critical systems. And we have to understand that this is really cybersecurity and our collaboration in this space is what's going to underpin important elements of our nation's economy, our nation's safety. We are a primary target of our adversaries. But there's a sort of a wonky, intelligence document that gets created once a year by the U.S. intelligence community, and it's called the Worldwide Threat Assessment or the Annual Threat Assessment. Back in 2019, the then Director of National Intelligence, a gentleman by the name of Dan Coates, delivered to the Congress this Worldwide Threat Assessment. And it highlighted the fact that both China and Russia already possess the ability to disrupt critical infrastructure in the United States. We know that our adversaries are going to continue to map out critical energy assets and critical infrastructure assets and business assets with the goal of gaining the ability to cause substantial damages. This is pre-positioning in our infrastructure to learn more about the way that we as a country work, to learn more about the way that our businesses work, and to map out options for the future. Just because you don't see the bad thing happening today, whatever it might be, money going out the door, emails, being deleted, critical information being lost. As an example, I think during the NotPetya attacks a couple years ago when that incident was brewing, Merck, as just one example, estimated that they lost at least a decade of critical research inside their facility when they lost all the servers and the infrastructure. And there's not even a way of telling if they were specifically targeted in that attack or if it was just collateral damage. But we have consistently observed Chinese Ministry of State Security affiliated cyber threat actors using publicly available information sources and common, well-known tactics to target government agencies, to target businesses, to target all the associated infrastructure. And like Jeff mentioned, especially in the environment that we're in today, where everyone's primarily working from home, where we had to pick up remote operations in a way that we never thought we would in the past, just to be able to continue to sustain things and keep them moving forward. This has been a unique opportunity to not only continue targeting people in the way that we know that nation state threat actors were targeting people through social media and through getting access to their home data and their home infrastructure first. Now, when the home environment is the work environment, those worlds have really blended together in a way that we could have anticipated a year and a half ago. So now it's even more important to make sure that not only do you as a business leader have knowledge of the fact that this is ongoing, these are key and critical threats to you and your business and our economy, but also make sure that your employees know about the threats and know about the risk and know that our adversaries are continuing to move around us all the time, whether it's a cyber crime group that is motivated by money only, or if it is a nation state actor because you're in a key and critical industry and they'd like to steal your intellectual property. It's been remarked that cyber has presented the greatest transference of wealth known in this world through the theft of intellectual property. Just billions of dollars a year of intellectual property and research that has been lost to nation state actors. And now we have to worry about our supply chains as well. So it's not just good enough for us to worry about keeping our own house in order, but we have to worry about our extended supply chain as well. So outside of all the tips that Jeff had provided to you, one thing I would, before we go into the Q&A period, would like to leave you with as a suggestion is it's not just about securing your own environment. It's not just about how you're managing your own risk internally. It's also about how you're managing your vendor risk, your third-party risk, the risk within your extended supply chain. And that's how we've seen many vulnerabilities exploited over the last couple of years have come through third-party attack vectors, hitting your suppliers up or downstream, inserting themselves into software build processes, using things as simple as malicious invoicing, targeting a CFO or a financial analyst inside of a company or an organization with a supposed invoice, because we all know you don't want to receive the invoice and ignore it and then have to start paying interest on the fact that it wasn't paid within whatever the agreed window is. And we're receiving invoices all the time from external parties. So that's a good typical vector for how external entities can be compromised and present risk to us. So it's about having that extended conversation with the people that you're doing business with as well to see how they're managing their risk and how that's going to affect and impact you.
Thank you to you both. We'll now move to the Q&A, and we'll actually, I want to start with something that Jeff, you covered really at the very beginning, which is, look, there's a lot of employees working remotely. They're using home internet and Wi-Fi to log into company devices and networks. Again, just as a recap and a sort of bullet point it, what should every employer require of its remote workforce to limit exposure to hackers? I just think this can't be overstated enough given what's happening in the world today.
Sorry, there, I was on mute. So first off, I would make sure that no matter how you or what device you're using, it is a workplace issued device. Using your own devices, you don't know what the rest of your family has done on your phone or your computers or whatnot. So number one is device level management. Enforce a VPN rule. In order to get to your network, you have to go through a virtual private network, hopefully which was one of the you use. Two-factor authentication. Again, and again, these are just normal cyber hygienic things that you're probably doing at your workplaces now. What I want to let everyone know is there should be nothing that's changed. right? So make sure that you take that home with you. One of the other things that you should have is a bring your own device policy back to work, right? So if it is your own device and you're bringing that into the office, what threats does that pose? Are you allowed to do that? Most of the circles that I run in, we're not allowed to take your phone into where we work. We have to leave them in the car or leave it in a lockbox outside the office environment. Things that can be done to your phone, that phone becomes a surveillance device. So, I mean, these are not like rocket science here, but what I think that has happened in our haste to get back to what some would say is normalcy, from a business operation standpoint, normalcy, we've kind of let our guard down. And I think that is probably one of the things that is most regrettable through this entire experience. The other thing that I would argue that most companies aren't doing a good job in, and that is measuring their success. I've had a lot of people tell me different stories, which are kind of scary, but phishing attempts, for example, they'll send out a phishing email deliberately to see who clicks on it, and then they beat the person up for doing it. Well, that's not a very good way to do a learning exercise, right? Reward those who do the right thing, but don't publicly shame the people that don't. Talk to them, let them learn, make it a learning experience. And as Nick stated, one of the things that we have seen a lot of, especially now that we're in the lockdown mode or starting to come out of the lockdown mode, is invoice attacks, right? So people are using social engineering tactics to impersonate the CFO telling the person that actually writes, the accounts payable person to send a check. And this isn't just to small companies in Baton Rouge or in Louisiana. This is to major corporations. Airbus and Boeing just had one not too long ago that was for a lot of money, and they ended up paying it. So they were basically socially engineered into doing something that was completely wrong, and it cost them quite a bit of money. Now, they got some of it back. I don't know the details of how much of it they got back, but keep your guard up. Again, never trust, always verify.
Thanks. And Nick, turning to you. So if I'm a small business owner, I don't have, huge piles of reserve cash to spend on IT or data support services. So what advice could you give for that small retailer or that small company to sort of protect not only their data, but the data that's going back and forth with their customers and vendors?
Sure. So I think it's, you don't have to spend a lot of money to make yourself more secure. A lot of times there are even free things that you can sign up for that are going to give you a tremendous edge over doing nothing at all. For example, if you're a small business and maybe you have a Microsoft Office subscription for using your computer, well, you can enable, you can just use your phone and use a free Microsoft application called an Authenticator and use two-factor authentication and turn that on so people can't log in to your devices and get access to your data without you again verifying that it's 100% you. Even if you're just using Gmail, if you're using a free email service that's out there, Google also has the opportunity for you to go into your settings and use something like Google Authenticator or something else, another free application on your phone to be able to set up multi-factor authentication. I think you can also just ask questions of those that you're already doing business with to see how consuming certain types of services are going to help you buy down some of the risk of operating today. As an example, if anybody there is using, us as your internet services provider, using Lumen, we're monitoring a tremendous amount of information every single day on behalf of our customers. Our Black Lotus Labs is our threat intelligence arm. They're monitoring 195 billion net flow sessions a day, more than 1 billion DNS queries a day. DNS is the domain name service. It's what translates when you type in google.com in the bar. It translates it to the numbers in the background that correlates to what is the actual IP address for Google as a website. So just partnering with people that you're already going to consume services from anyway, and understanding how to select them so that you're getting the most out of that. There's a tremendous amount that you can do there. And there's tons of free resources out there as well. There's free resources from governments. There's free resources from some of your vendors that I'm sure you're using, even if you're a small retailer. There are a ton of free resources out there to either be able to educate yourself, educate your employees, use free tools to help secure yourself, to help to plan and to think about resilience. A lot of times thinking about cyber attacks and thinking about the risk to your business is the same way that you think that you would prepare for a hurricane. You're going to want to think about, having a car that's gassed up, having those non-perishable items on hand, batteries, flashlights. Do you have a generator? What are you going to do? What's your plan? Are you going to communicate with your family? Planning for cybersecurity and for an incident is very, very similar to how we plan for natural hazards in the real world.
Hey, JR, can I add one thing to that?
Go for it.
So one of the things that I get asked a lot by people that are on boards and the presidents of companies is that very question you just asked, right? I'm not big enough to have an IT shop. So I tell them, just ask the person that's responsible for your IT, whoever that is, one question and only one question. And that is, how does your data flow? And if you get that confused puppy look, you're doing something right by asking that question. You can't protect what you can't see. And it's just common sense, right? So how does your data move from creation to basically disposal? And also, how does it interface with those people that you're doing e-commerce with? And if the person that's running that IT shop can't answer that question, you need to really consider another alternative.
And somewhat of a follow-up, and we'll start with Jeff and then Nick, if your thoughts jump in afterwards. But how do you protect your data in the cloud? And what do I need to look for, again, without major IT expertise? And maybe the larger overall question, cloud or no cloud?
Sure. So there's a lot of advantages to a cloud architecture. And again, it comes back down to the question that came right before this is, if you're a small business, can you afford a cloud or a cloud service provider? And I would argue, can you not afford that? Because keeping things on premise has advantages. There's no doubt in my mind there's advantages to keeping things close to home. But there's also advantage in scale, with scale when it comes to cloud adaptation. That said, there's a lot of issues associated with that. So I recommend a hybrid solution, right? I like to have a little bit of my data back at the house, make sure that those, crown jewels are protected. Because, really, again, it comes back to that data flow comment I just made before. Everyone says, oh, my stuff's in the cloud. Well, where is the cloud? Where's that server physically being kept? Let's just assume it's being kept in a not so friendly country to the United States. What if we went to war, right? Heaven forbid we did. Would you be able to access that data, right? What kind of service level agreements do you have with that cloud provider? What do they do if they're compromised, right? How much can you do a scan on that? Can you actually go out and see what the vulnerabilities associated with that cloud are? How do they manage their databases? Do they have it completely partitioned off? You're putting a lot of confidence and a lot of trust into someone that you don't know. And ironically, if you don't know where those data servers or those data farms are, you don't even know where it is. If it's somewhere in Russia, we're in trouble. Right? Microsoft put a 750,000 square foot data center in Ireland, right? Just south of Dublin, because of the climatic conditions and the labor costs over there. So a lot of data goes to Ireland. And that's great. Most of the time that we have a great relationship with the Irish. But what happens if we didn't? Right? So now you've got all your stuff basically in a quote cloud, and then you have no access to it. So again, there's a lot of benefits to doing a cloud architecture. There's a lot of downside to it. So I like having a hybrid solution. A hybrid solution is basically the best of both worlds. And I think that that's probably what's most beneficial to most small businesses, because you do have an increased, you basically don't have to hire an IT staff, as Nick said earlier. The cloud service providers have their own security people there. They basically make sure that you're compliant if you have a foreign country that you're doing business in. You've got a lot of issues now associated with the European Commission and the requirements that they're now putting on data. So the cloud provider actually absorbs those regulatory compliance issues.
In addition to Jeff's recommendation for always having a plan to go to war with the Irish, the I think the biggest recommendation I can give somebody on the cloud is make sure that you follow the instructions. When the number of digital endpoints and connected devices that are proliferating data across our network have to be protected from those internal and external security threats. Cloud can help with that. Edge compute in a more localized way can help you with that if you want some of the advantages of cloud, but you don't want to have the potential of offshoring your assets. And additionally, it can provide a great differentiating factor when it comes to uptime, availability, application performance, but you have to follow the instructions. So where Jeff was saying, going to a cloud provider can help you to meet compliance and can help you to be more secure, it absolutely can. If you transition to the cloud in the way that you're supposed to. And I think that's something that trips people up a lot of times, is they know that cloud service providers in particular are investing a lot of time and a lot of money to provide secure environments for their customers in a way that a business owner knows they're not going to match that level of investment. It's tremendous. Very few people could match that level of investment. But you have to follow the instructions for how to actually migrate your information, your systems, and your applications to the cloud, because there's a certain layer of security and consumer configuration that you have to do that the cloud service provider is just not responsible for. So you can't just offload it and forget about it. Transfer your risk to the cloud service provider. Still your data. You're still the owner. You got to take a little bit of responsibility there for looking at that.
Thanks. And Jeff, look, as someone of Irish heritage, I've checked with our people. We're okay at the moment. We don't really have any angst against the U.S. right now, so everybody can just take a pill and relax. But we will move on. A lot is out there about cyber insurance. Do I need it? And if I do get it, what should I look for in a cyber insurance policy? And then sort of in line with that, should I get a risk assessment?
So I'll take a first crack at this. So yes, to answer your second question first, you should definitely get a risk assessment. People ask me that all the time. Say, well, do you go to the dentist? Again, have a third party come in and look at your, I brush my teeth every single day. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get a cavity, right? So yes, you should have a third party come in and do a risk assessment, basically to mitigate any kind of risk that you have. That said, cyber insurance is good. One of the things that's probably most important is understanding what's in the contract and what's not in the contract, probably even more importantly. You've got a lot of fine print there you need to understand. One of the things you need to take into consideration, and we've learned this locally here in Louisiana, is that, when you do get breached, there may be a clause in your contract, in your insurance contract, that prevents you from actually taking mitigation, and remediating and fixing or stopping the bleeding. That happens quite a bit and happened to us in Louisiana when our school systems got hacked several years ago. In some of the parishes, we were not able to go out and actually fix the problem until the insurance company got in and did their forensics investigation. So those kind of things you need to take into consideration. Arguably, not all policies are created equal. Mitigation is one thing. Restoration is another, and they usually charge you more. In fact, they always charge you more for the more services that you get. So mitigating the threat is one piece of that puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is basically restoration. One of the interesting statistics, I gave you that number of $4.2 million on the average data breach. About 38% of that cost is lost business. So you want to get back online as fast as you can. And then the post-breach response is about 27% of that number. So over half of the cost of an incident is wrapped up between you losing business and fixing the problem. So having insurance to help compensate that or mitigate that risk, I think, is a very key ingredient for most businesses. Over to Nick.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say just make sure you look at the mix of approved vendors when it comes to your insurance policy. You may have someone that you've always worked with that's always helped you with local IT issues. You may have a security firm that you've preferred to work with or you've worked with in the past. If they're not part of that approved vendors list that is provided to you with your insurance policy, then you can't engage them. during that response if the insurance is actually going to pay out. So it's just important to plan ahead of time. Normally there's quite a few companies that are on these lists. They're normally very reputable. They've gone through thorough exams with the insurance provider to be able to get on the list. A lot of the big ones that you might think of from media reports are normally on there, but it does require a little bit of planning in advance. And you do also need to do your due diligence. A lot of times the risk assessment may be part of getting one of those cyber insurance plans. But even if it's not, there are a couple of insurance providers in this space that incentivize things like risk assessments, implementation of certain technology, being able to demonstrate that you're kind of doing your own due diligence as a business owner in this space. So those are some good things to look for whenever you're engaged in that.
And finally, look, industry is a major economic developer along the Gulf Coast. And as industry prepares for what is known as the fourth industrial revolution, what technology is being developed to protect this sector from attacks? And we can start with either one of y'all and go from there.
I think every sector is going to be transformed in some way, whether it's the use of autonomous vehicles and smart traffic maneuvering, transportation, hopefully in our ports and waterways with what we're seeing on some of the coastlines right now, manufacturing, energy management, you name it. Every single industry and every single sector is going to be affected. Here where I'm sitting today, we're trying to build the platform upon which people can build and engineer their own success to support the fourth industrial revolution. But it has to come with security baked into your threat model. You have to be able to sit back and ask questions about what would happen if, and who might have an interest in this. And you can't dismiss anything out of hand and say, no, I'm not interesting enough, or no, I'm not big enough, or no, I'm too big. That wouldn't affect me. You have to be able to build out a threat model as you continue to engage in those technologies that are going to revolutionize all of our industries. You have to be able to build a robust threat model to understand what it is you need, to have a layered approach, kind of getting the defense in depth, a layered approach to how you're going to tackle a problem. Because that's really all it's about. It's about buying down your risk through having many different layers that if one fails, then I'm going to be able to satisfy this requirement. If the drains outside of my house fail on how I've sloped the ground with the water runoff, then I know that I've got a sump pump down in the basement. If the sump pump fails, then I guess I'm going down there with my shop vac, and trying to get it before it starts going up the drywall. It's about having those layered approaches to securing ourselves and having that well thought out process, because it's going to be a little bit different for every single business and for every single person that's involved here.
Yeah, I just like to throw a little bit more spaghetti on the wall on this. One of the things that is very concerning to me is as the president of two companies and doing cybersecurity for a living, is what we don't know. I mean, this fourth industrial revolution, whatever you want to call it, basically is nothing more than the Internet of Things on steroids, taking over the manufacturing, taking over production, taking over different aspects of our manufacturing and services based industry and record speed. One of the things, we just had a kickoff in Baton Rouge at our Internet of Things Living Lab a couple of days ago, and one of the things that the government actually paid for that was they want to understand the phenomenology associated with the Internet of Things and people, right? So how are these devices, the integration of people and devices, where are those attack vectors? What are those things that we can leverage from a human performance or a human behavioral standpoint and compromise? And then more importantly than that, perhaps, is what don't we see? So the machine-to-machine interactions, what are the things going on in your home or in your workplaces that you don't see, that are not necessarily traversing your network, right? So, we did a study on in our Internet of Things Living Labs just a couple of days ago on what is the busiest time in the home environment from an electromagnetic perspective. So most people would think, yeah, when the kids come home from school, they're banging on their computers, they're watching TV, we got all kind of smart devices in their kitchen, blah, right? All that going on at some time. Well, in reality, it was not. Reality, it was around 2:30 a.m. Everyone's asleep, and that's kind of counterintuitive. But what you don't realize is all those devices that you have in your home start downloading data, talking to one another, and start processing, getting ready for the next day, right? So that is somewhat problematic. And if you weren't aware of that, or you have things connected that from your office, that potentially is an attack vector that could be exploited. One of the things I tell people now that we're all working from home, or a lot of us are working from home, is turn Alexa off. Hopefully you don't have Alexa or any other personal assistant or digital assistant in your house, but that is nothing more than a surveillance device. And again, Alexa talks to other devices, and Cortana or whatever other, I'm not picking on Amazon here, but those devices are nothing more than a giant surveillance device. Machine-to-machine phenomenology and the associated security risks are very, very dangerous. We need to understand them. We're doing a lot of research in our company trying to do that, understanding, build that understanding, and take that information and give it to the public and give it back to our sponsors.
Well, this topic is so important, so complex, and really we could do probably one of those Ken Burns-like 6-part series just on this topic. But unfortunately, we're out of time for today. So that will bring us to a close. And on behalf of Business Report, let me thank Jeff and Nick for joining us this morning. Talk about some extremely smart advice and just some incredible talent that we've been able to get here for you today. Thank you both, Jeff and Nick. A reminder that a digital replay of this event will be available later today on Daily Report PM. And I'd also like to express my appreciation to the sponsors of this webcast, CMA Technology Solutions, the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, and Baker Donaldson. And of course, thank you to those of you in the audience for giving us a bit of your time this morning. Thank you and have a great day.